The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of the children's hospital, casting long golden rectangles across the polished marble floor. Jake Martinez sat on the bottom step of the grand staircase, his work clothes still smudged with oil and grease from the morning shift at the auto shop. He had come straight from work, not bothering to change, because visiting hours were almost over. In his large, calloused hands, he held a small teddy bear with a red ribbon around its neck. The bear was nothing fancy, just something he had picked up from the hospital gift shop downstairs. But he hoped it would bring a smile to Emma's face. Emma was 6 years old, with bright blue eyes and blonde hair that had grown back in soft wisps after her treatments. She had been in the hospital for 3 months now, fighting a battle that no child should ever have to face. Jake had met her during one of his visits to see his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who was recovering from surgery on the 4th floor. Emma had been sitting alone in the hallway, looking lost and scared. Her parents worked long hours and couldn't always be there during visiting hours. Something about her reminded Jake of his little sister Sarah, who had passed away when she was about Emma's age. That was 15 years ago, but the memory still ached in his chest. Since that first meeting, Jake had made it a point to visit Emma whenever he could. He would bring her small gifts, read her stories, or sometimes just sit quietly while she drew pictures with her colored pencils. The nurses had grown used to seeing the tall, gentle mechanic in the children's ward, and they welcomed his presence because they could see how much it meant to Emma. Today was different, though. Today, Emma had asked him to meet her at the bottom of the staircase that led to the hospital's rooftop garden. It was a place she had mentioned many times but had never been able to visit. The garden was 5 flights up, and Emma was too weak to make the climb on her own. Jake heard the soft shuffle of slippers on marble before he saw her. Emma appeared around the corner, moving slowly with her IV pole trailing behind her. She wore pink pajamas decorated with tiny unicorns, and her face lit up when she saw him waiting for her. "Jake," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with genuine joy. He stood up quickly, tucking the teddy bear behind his back. "Hey there, sunshine. How are you feeling today?" Emma made her way over to him, each step careful and measured. "I'm okay. Are we really going up to see the garden?" Jake knelt down to her level, bringing out the teddy bear with a flourish. "First, I have something for you." Emma's eyes widened with delight as she hugged the bear tight against her chest. "He's perfect. What's his name?" "That's up to you to decide," Jake said with a warm smile. "Every bear needs a name from the person who loves him most." Emma considered this seriously, studying the bear's friendly face. "I think his name is Courage. Because he's brave enough to go on adventures with me." Jake felt a tightness in his throat. Even at 6 years old, Emma understood things that most adults never learned. Courage is a perfect name. They stood together at the base of the staircase, looking up at the flights of steps that stretched above them. The stairwell was quiet, with only the distant sounds of the hospital filtering through the walls. Sunlight from a high window created patterns on the steps, making the climb look almost magical. Emma took hold of the stair railing with one small hand, still clutching Courage with the other. She placed one foot on the first step, then paused and looked up at Jake with those serious blue eyes. "If you carry me up the stairs," she said quietly, "I'll tell you a secret." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. There was something in her voice, something important and urgent that he couldn't quite identify. He had carried her before, when she was too tired to walk back to her room, but this felt different. "What kind of secret?" he asked gently. Emma glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer to him. "A really important one, but I can only tell you at the top, in the garden. That's where secrets like this need to be shared." Jake studied her face, seeing a maturity there that broke his heart. Emma had been forced to grow up too fast, to understand things about life and death that children should never have to contemplate. But there was also something else in her expression, something that looked almost like peace. "Are you sure you want to go all the way up there?" he asked. "It's 5 flights of stairs. That's a lot of steps." Emma nodded firmly. "I've been thinking about this for weeks. I need to see the garden, Jake. And I need to tell you my secret." Without another word, Jake scooped Emma up in his arms, careful not to disturb her IV line. She was so light, like holding a bundle of feathers. She wrapped her free arm around his neck and settled Courage between them. "Ready for the adventure?" Jake asked. Ready, Emma whispered. They began their ascent, Jake taking the steps slowly and steadily. Emma's head rested against his shoulder, and he could feel her breathing, shallow but regular. The stairwell was peaceful, their footsteps echoing softly in the enclosed space. Tell me about when you were little, Emma said as they reached the first landing. Jake paused to rest for a moment, though he wasn't tired. He wanted to savor this time with her, to make the journey last. What do you want to know? Did you have adventures? Jake smiled, remembering. My little sister Sarah and I used to build forts in our backyard. We'd use old sheets and lawn chairs, and we'd pretend we were explorers discovering new lands. Sarah always insisted that our forts were magical places where anything could happen. Was she sick like me? Emma asked quietly. Jake's step faltered slightly, but he continued climbing. He had never told Emma about Sarah, but somehow she seemed to understand. Yes, she was. But she taught me that being sick doesn't mean you can't have adventures. Some of the best adventures happen in your imagination. They climbed in comfortable silence for a while, passing the second floor, then the third. Jake could feel Emma's breathing becoming slightly more labored, but she never complained or asked him to stop. Jake, she said as they approached the fourth floor landing. Yes, sunshine. Do you think the garden will be pretty? I think it will be the most beautiful garden in the world, Jake replied without hesitation. Emma giggled softly. You haven't even seen it yet. I don't need to see it, Jake said. Any garden that you want to visit that badly has to be special. As they climbed the final flight of stairs, Jake could see natural light growing brighter above them. The door to the rooftop garden was painted bright green, with a small window that revealed glimpses of blue sky and green leaves beyond. Jake pushed open the door, and they stepped into paradise. The rooftop garden was more beautiful than either of them had imagined. Raised beds filled with colorful flowers stretched across the space, with winding gravel paths connecting different sections. There were benches placed strategically to take advantage of the best views, and the entire garden was surrounded by a low wall that offered a panoramic view of the city below. The afternoon sun warmed their faces as Jake carried Emma to a bench in the center of the garden. He set her down gently, making sure she was comfortable, and took a seat beside her. Emma clutched courage tightly and looked around in wonder. It's perfect, she breathed. Look at all the colors. The garden was indeed a riot of color. Red roses climbed trellises along one wall, while beds of purple lavender filled the air with their sweet scent. Yellow marigolds and orange nasturtiums created bright splashes throughout the space, and butterflies danced from flower to flower. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, both absorbing the beauty around them. Jake watched Emma's face, seeing joy and peace there in equal measure. This was why he had carried her up those 5 flights of stairs, not just because she had asked, but because he could see how much she needed this moment of pure beauty and tranquility. Jake, Emma said finally, her voice very soft. Yes, sunshine. Emma turned to face him, her blue eyes serious and clear. I need to tell you my secret now. Jake felt his chest tighten with apprehension, but he nodded encouragingly. I'm listening. Emma took a deep breath, hugging courage closer. The doctors told my mom and dad yesterday that the medicine isn't working anymore. They said I might not have very much time left. The words hit Jake like a physical blow, but he kept his expression calm and steady. He had suspected that Emma's condition was worsening. He had seen the worried looks on the nurses' faces, the hushed conversations that stopped when he approached. But hearing it from Emma herself made it real in a way that nothing else could. That must have been scary to hear, Jake said quietly. Emma nodded. It was. But then I started thinking about what you told me about your sister Sarah, and about adventures, and about magical places. And I realized something important. What did you realize? Emma looked out over the garden, watching a butterfly land on a nearby rosé. I realized that I'm not scared anymore. Because I've had so many wonderful adventures already. I've met you, and I've made friends with the nurses, and I've learned to draw pictures that make people smile. And now I've seen this beautiful garden. Jake felt tears threatening, but he blinked them back. Emma needed him to be strong right now. But there's more to my secret, Emma continued. I also realized something about you. About me. Emma turned back to face him, her small hand reaching out to touch his. I know you miss your sister Sarah. I can see it in your eyes sometimes. But I want you to know that visiting me, being my friend, has helped her too. Jake frowned, not understanding. What do you mean? Emma's voice was soft but certain. I think Sarah sent you to me. I think she knew I needed a big brother to have adventures with, and she knew you needed a little sister to take care of again. So she made sure we found each other. The tears that Jake had been holding back finally spilled over. He wiped them away quickly, but Emma had already seen them. It's okay to cry, she said gently. I cry sometimes too, but they're not always sad tears. Sometimes they're happy tears, because I got to have such a wonderful friend. Jake pulled Emma into a gentle hug, careful not to disturb her IV. She felt so fragile in his arms, but her spirit was anything but fragile. She was the strongest person he had ever known. Thank you for telling me your secret, he whispered. There's one more part, Emma said, pulling back to look at him. I want you to promise me something. Anything. I want you to keep coming to the hospital to visit other kids who need a friend. There are lots of children here who feel scared and alone, just like I did when we first met. They need someone like you, someone who understands about adventures and magic and not giving up. Jake nodded, his throat too tight to speak. And I want you to tell them about this garden, Emma continued. Tell them that no matter how hard things get, there's always something beautiful waiting for them if they're brave enough to climb the stairs to find it. They sat together in the garden as the afternoon faded toward evening, watching the butterflies and breathing in the scent of the flowers. Jake told Emma more stories about Sarah, and Emma shared her dreams about all the places she would have liked to visit someday. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Jake knew it was time to take Emma back downstairs. The nurses would be looking for her, and she needed her rest. Ready to go back? He asked gently. Emma nodded, clutching courage tightly. I'm ready. But Jake, yes, this was the best adventure ever. Jake carried Emma back down the 5 flights of stairs, taking his time, making the journey last as long as possible. When they reached her floor, the nurses were indeed looking for her, but their scolding was gentle when they saw how peaceful and happy she looked. Jake tucked Emma into her hospital bed and made sure Courage was positioned perfectly beside her pillow. He promised to visit again the next day, though they both knew that their time together was growing short. 3 days later, Emma passed away peacefully in her sleep, with Courage still clutched in her arms. Jake attended her funeral, sitting in the back of the small church and listening as Emma's parents and the hospital staff shared stories about her courage, her kindness, and her ability to find joy even in the darkest moments. They mentioned the mysterious friend who had brought her so much happiness in her final months, though they never knew his name. After the service, Jake walked back to the hospital. He climbed the 5 flights of stairs to the rooftop garden, carrying a small bouquet of yellow marigolds, Emma's favorite flowers from their visit. He sat on the same bench where they had shared her secret, looking out over the city as the sun set. The garden was just as beautiful as it had been that day, maybe even more so. Jake could almost feel Emma's presence there, along with Sarah's, both of them watching over him and smiling. True to his promise, Jake began visiting other children in the hospital. He would sit with them when they were scared, read them stories when they couldn't sleep, and listen to their hopes and fears. And whenever a child was strong enough and curious enough, he would tell them about a magical garden 5 flights up, where butterflies danced among the flowers and secrets could be shared safely. Many of those children eventually made the journey up those stairs, some walking on their own, others carried by Jake or their parents or the nursing staff. Each one discovered their own magic in that rooftop sanctuary, their own reasons for hope and wonder. And sometimes, on quiet afternoons when the light fell just right across the flowers, Jake could swear he heard the sound of children's laughter carried on the wind. Emma and Sarah and all the other brave souls who had taught him that love doesn't end with death, but transforms into something even more powerful. The teddy bear that Jake had given Emma, Courage, was donated to the hospital's collection of comfort items for children. Jake would sometimes see other sick children holding him, drawing strength from his friendly face and gentle presence. It seemed fitting that Courage would continue Emma's work of bringing comfort to those who needed it most. Years passed, and Jake continued his visits to the hospital. He became a familiar figure in the children's ward, known for his gentle manner and his willingness to listen. The staff eventually learned his name and his story, though he never sought recognition for his volunteer work. The rooftop garden became a place of pilgrimage for many families, a destination that represented hope and beauty in the midst of fear and uncertainty. The hospital administration, recognizing its importance, invested in making the garden even more accessible and beautiful, adding new plantings and comfortable seating areas. But for Jake, the garden would always be Emma's place, the location where a brave little girl had shared her most important secret and taught him that love is the greatest adventure of all. Every visit there was a tribute to her memory and a renewal of his promise to carry on her legacy of courage, kindness, and joy. The stairs still creaked in the same places, and the afternoon light still fell across the steps in the same golden patterns. And Jake still climbed them regularly, sometimes carrying children who needed help making the journey, sometimes walking alone with his memories and his gratitude for the gift that Emma had given him. In the end, Emma had been right about secrets. Some are too important to keep to yourself. The secret she had shared that day in the garden had transformed Jake's life and touched countless others. Her courage lived on in every child who found comfort in his visits, in every family who discovered hope in the rooftop garden, and in every person who learned that even in the face of loss, love endures and grows.